Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have RDV from the Milwaukee Man from the Great Midwest. Tonight, we're covering some movies that are showing over on Netflix in general. Periodically, we like to do this because as a topical thing here in the United States, Central Florida to be specific, where we're broadcasting live from. We like to cover what's coming out because we get a lot of requests for certain movies. And while we're an 80s based action movie type channel, we do delve into a lot of different areas, including the occasional TV spot. You can check out our current Twin Peaks stream that we've been doing for finishing up season 3. We've been reviewing the Rocky movies in orders, and we have a bunch of Chuck Norris movies and canon classics, as we love to say, because we're the channel where all that happens. And RDV, I got to tell you, after kind of getting through Rocky 5 Sunday night, discussing it with everybody, we were wanting to just kind of stay a little topical because there's a lot of things going up on all the streaming sites on the next change of the month here. And so on Netflix, I was looking and going, I usually don't find anything recent that's pretty darn good. I know your tastes are a little different than mine, so I know you've got a few you want to talk about. So I picked out a few oldie movies I think are really, really good, worth watching. Many of them we have not reviewed yet here on the Extreme Movie Show, and I know you've got a few things too. So let me hand this over to you as people fill in for the first selection on Netflix. What would you like to bring up and talk about?
Well, my tastes have been started changing lately because after we started watching All of Us Are Dead. I used to poo-poo when it comes to foreign films because I was like, okay, whatever, they look kind of hokey and stuff. But after I watched All of Us Are Dead and I started watching some more, I was like, wow, these are actually not that bad,
Right.
As I always cringe when it comes to Korean films or Chinese films or Chinese, the bad CG. You can tell it's wholly, they're trying to do outer space stuff, so it's really, really bad CG, and you can tell it's like, wow, this is like 90s CG.
That placid level of CG.
So that being said, I started looking and doing a deep dive. It's fine because Netflix, for some reason, it's just started to become like, hey, you watch one Korean film, here's a whole entire list of everything that's Korean to watch. Yes. So I was going through trying to find ones that aren't just sappy love dramas, and I came across 5 of them. They're actually kind of cool.
Okay. Now let's just no particular order, like best to worst, anything like that. But whether you've seen it or not, something that might be worth talking about a little bit.
There's only one on here that I've actually seen. The rest, there's ones I'm actually interested in watching.
Okay.
I actually will go least to what I'm most interested in because that's what I based them off of. All right, so this is my little top 5. So I'll keep it brief. First one being number 5 would be the Pirates in the Last Royal Treasure, because it seems like a Korean version of the Pirates Caribbean, which I did enjoy that movie for Disney, and it looks I watched the preview. It looks a little goofy. That just came out. It's a movie set in the late 14th century where a group of pirates are basically going after a lost royal treasure, and they got the government also going after it too. So that's why I guess getting the pirates kind of vibe going there. So I'm interested in looking at that.
Well, it caught your interest, obviously, too. Let me ask you, when we watched Train to Busan and we covered it here on the channel, we talked about one of the characters we loved, and we nicknamed him Korean Chuck Norris. Is there anybody in this trailer for this show that you think rings a bell?
There's no one in this movie that I recognize. That's the thing I'm going for. I'm not really going for familiarity because I was just trying to find people that that just things that catch my interest. Okay. Surprisingly, yeah, because I don't really watch a lot of Korean stuff, so I really don't recognize a lot of people. More so where I grew up watching a lot of American TV and movies. So yeah, there's a lot of people that I'm recognizing that because they use the same people over and over again. This seems to be a lot of younger new casts in each of the ones I'm picking out.
Okay. I'm going to go with one of my favorite movies of the late 90s. I think it's one of the best science fiction movies in the last 20 to 25 years. And it's got Ethan Hawke in it. And it's called Gattaco. And this is a futuristic society where he has a dream of going to space, basically. But because he's not the right genetic makeup and other little details for him, he'll never have a chance to do it. Yet somehow it reminds me of Robert Heinlein back in the day, his hardcore sci-fi stuff back in the 50s and 60s. He just had this will to get up there, and he would do anything it would take to get there. So it's neat to see him kind of working his way through the system while he's being constantly watched, monitored, and that's just how society is. And so it's kind of an interesting take a little bit before things have gotten so crazy in today's world about watching everybody and what you do and funneling people into little areas of what you think are going to be good for, whether you have a natural inclination for it or whether you have an average IQ, therefore you can't do this or that or whatever. I like it, and that's something that doesn't get explored a lot in movies in general. Usually, of course, like we've said before, their action or their love or their drama and sci-fi it's hard to find a really good one. But when there's one to sink your teeth into, it's really worth it, and the payoff is huge there too. So Gattaca, which is definitely my top 10 of the year. It came out in 97, 98, I believe it was, with the late 90s. Fantastic film. Highly recommend anybody watching it. Now, have you actually seen Gattaca?
Yeah, I saw it a long time ago, but the concept has been used a lot by for political means. Basically, this that's where privacy is basically obsolete. When we've been seeing that kind of with what's going on some of the parts of the world, especially here too. So it's a very topical movie based on control and and just just fear, because people think that can happen today, and that's the scary part when someone makes a movie and you start seeing similarities of what happened in the movie, which possibly could happen anytime here soon,
Yeah.
But
We might have a special visitor in a moment, Eglinton from whatever the name of his channels are called now too. He likes talking this stuff as well, so we'll see if he pops in. But in the meantime, why don't we go ahead with another one of your selections on Netflix?
This one is actually a TV series. It's called My Name. It's supposed to be after it takes place where a girl basically after her father, Pat is murdered. She on her 18th birthday, she puts her trust in a mob boss who basically suggested maybe her father was killed by somebody who works in the police force. So she ends up joining the police force under a false identity and basically tracks down her father's killer. It's 8 episodes. This came out last year, so that's another one I'm kind of intrigued in looking at. This is another Korean one. So you're gonna see a lot of that theme popping in tonight. But looks interesting.
I think I've seen a trailer for that too, and I couldn't tell how serious it was trying to be or whatever. But a lot of these whodunits, you don't necessarily get a lot, especially not on Netflix. Yeah, I saw that too.
Yep.
We're talking what's new on Netflix. What's going on?
I know. Well, not much, nothing. I've got the evening. My wife, who we're usually out and about on Tuesdays, decided she wanted a shopping night. She says, "Can we go to Old Time Pottery? Have fun." That's so I saw what you're talking about, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I want to get in on this. There's some stuff, some new stuff that I've noticed, and of course some things that have passed, and it's like, oh, wait a second, I forgot that was out. I haven't seen that, so I want to check that out. I love some of Venkman's suggestions here with My Name, and it seems like Netflix, with very few exceptions, has become the Korean channel almost.
I don't mind.
That South Korea is so hot right now.
I know, right? Thanks to Squid Game, now everything is showing up. But not only that, but a lot of the shows that they already had is kind of popping up in the recommendeds because we saw Squid Game. So they're like, wait a second, we have this. Check this out. Yep. And yeah, there's some cool stuff on it. I was looking over my list because I got to admit, my head isn't exactly there anymore for titles. And I was like, wait a second, I just saw one, and it was a really cool game. It was a really cool show about these. Once again, it's Korean, about these kids. They're just walking along. All of a sudden, they're in they're in a game zone, and it's one of those things where, of course, you could team up, and if you win the game, everything's cool. If you lose the game, you die. That's one thing I think is a little bit derivative of the Korean shows, but still really cool. I'm trying to find the title.
It's called Alice in Borderland. It's
Alice in Borderland.
It's based off a 2020 manga. It's 8 episodes long. I just finished the first episode.
My daughter, as soon as I said, have y'all been watching this Alice in Borderland? Oh my gosh, I love that manga. And they started going off on that, but it was It was really entertaining.
I gotta say, it was rough for me in the first 30 minutes. And that's when until the game actually started.
Mhm.
I was like, this is really, really, really hokey.
Yeah, it was. When it first started, I actually got vibes. I don't know if you guys saw it back in 2000. There was a horror film called Cube.
Yep. Yep.
And at first they were in this office building and they were like, oh no, let's go over to this room. We gotta get out of
Two
the
doors.
building. So you go
Dead
here
or-
and you go here and
Yeah.
you go here. And they realized that they really didn't have to leave one of the rooms at a certain point, or it was and I was like, okay, this is very much like, oh no, this is like, I got it. Okay. And it's a very entertaining film. You mentioned, and you guys were talking about what was it? All of Us Are Dead Now, or
Yeah.
you guys did a show on that one. This one I liked a little bit better because unlike All of Us Are Dead, I could tell who the people were. All of a sudden, I had a hard time. I was like 6 episodes in where they start whittling all the characters down before I was like, okay, this is Hinjo.
Did you watch it English dub or Korean?
I watched it English dub because I was watching it while I was getting the auction ready, and I couldn't pay attention to the.
I guess that's the first time I've watched anything Korean dub, and I actually like the English dub that actually didn't sound hokey.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Because like that's definitely, if you're watching Squid Games, make sure that you're watching the actual Korean, because the acting is way over the top on that. But there are quite a few things out there that is.
Well, to comment on what LK's mentioned there in chat, I want to make a note of, because it's one thing we haven't brought up a lot. And at E, we usually do our lists of top 10 for each of the years. We have some of those up. We review things in order and rank them. So we do that here on the Extreme Movie Show. But what LK's talking about Netflix having cheaper licenses, true, that's just maximizing your advantage as a business, especially when something is really hot, like with Squid Games coming up hot. Okay, let's see what we can mine for content now. And one of the big pivots I think that's going on too, and I see it a lot on my financial websites that I do my research on, about how we don't even talk about Nielsen ratings or millions of viewers, or even, God forbid, that age-old Nielsen classic, the demographics, 18 to 15, at least here in the United States. It's more about minutes watched. And so you can talk about your Ozarks and some other things too, like Squid Games, that are super hot. But it's interesting how you look at that and go, well, that's not necessarily a lot of people. It could be somebody watching it over and over again. But if you've listened to some of our top 10 lists, where I'm going to go back to, I believe this year was 1983, directed by John Carpenter, a story by Stephen King. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but it really captures what life was like in the late 70s, early 80s. And it's something you and I are very familiar with, E, and I'm just going to throw it out there and say, Christine.
We watched it this was 2 nights ago.
Did you now?
Yeah, Gail, I was just like, I want to watch something familiar, and just, it was there. I was like, oh, there you go, Christine. And it actually, we were watching going, oh my, this is better than what I remember, actually.
It's a little darker too, actually. And it's, a nerd basically gets a car that is possessed, and he gains confidence from it. It's kind of like the allegory of the ring and Lord of the Rings. It makes you something that you're not, and the power that comes with it. And of course it has an appropriate ending, and it's more Stephen King-ish than a lot of the Stephen King-ish stuff of the past 10, 20 years, especially the made-for-TV stuff, which has been very hit or miss, mostly miss. But it's a solid tale, and if it's your introduction to early 80s stuff, it's gonna look very good. It's not bad. It's decent. I still enjoy it. Every once in a while, I'm like, man, that's pretty good. Have you seen this, RDV?
Which one is this? It's called
Possessed Car, Christine.
Oh yeah, I read the book too.
Gotcha.
This was when I first watched it after reading the book, I thought, it's a Cliff Notes, because
the book is better.
The book is better, yes, of course. But I watched it, when we watched it again, I was actually kind of surprised at how deep it went. I was very appreciative of that.
Yeah, the book was, to me, a little more disturbing than the actual. They tried to capture as much as they could, but I was like, you get more of a backstory of who the character is, main character, and everything, and then about Christine, who she really was, before he possessed the car, all that stuff.
Some of the best mutton chops you'll ever see on film, especially since it's not a 70s flick there, too. But RDV, that does bring us around to you. What's another little selection that you have there on Netflix you wanted to bring up?
My next one is another one is number 3 is gonna be called The Uncanny Counter. This just sounds kind of weird. It's based off a webtoon. It's 16 episodes long. It came out in 2020. It's about noodle shop employees who hunt down demons at night. They're basically demon hunters. It just sounds kind of kooky and wacky. So I was like, oh, it's a webtoon. Maybe I'll like it. So I'm gonna check that out. And the fact that it's 16 episodes is kind of cool because 8 episodes are nice, but it's like it leaves me wanting more. And then and I'm just kind of worried I'm gonna get into this, especially when it gets to stuff that's came out in 2020. That's it. It's done. So if it leaves on a cliffhanger, like all of us are dead. I was like, it's gonna drive me nuts. But that's been lately since everything's COVID messed everything up. So like these things are made. A lot of these shows, like All of Us Are Dead, was made for Netflix.
Yes.
It's not like they bought the rights. So there's been no word about if they're gonna make a sequel, and stuff. I've been scouring the internet because I was like, dude, it's like I hate watching a show, committing to it, and then finding out it's just there's no word. It's just dead in the water.
Right.
Jupiter's Legacy. Seriously, look, I didn't love Jupiter's Legacy. I liked it. I thought it was a good, solid show, but it left with a cliffhanger that I really wanted to find out what happens next. And then they cancel it. 1 season. All right. Go figure.
Well, speaking of what's coming on Netflix or something old, you mentioned you had a few more. What's another one?
Okay, you guys are wrestling fans a lot more than I am, but I do remember the golden age, and I do remember some of the names. There is a superhero TV show that just came on Netflix.
Oh no!
This thing is made for $1.50. I mean, it is a cheap ass superhero movie or TV show.
Glow?
But
no.
What's up?
Is it Glow? He's asking.
It's called The Guardians of Justice.
Okay, I was gonna say,
it stars Diamond Dallas Page.
Yes,
it is so ridiculously cool, and I mean that in the worst way possible. That I just had to watch this to the end. The special effects are horrible, and they don't care. This is like somebody says, you know what? Like I said, I got about $50. Who can I hire? I need a name. Okay, let's get Diamond Dallas Page to play Batman. And he does. And they've got, it's basically a stand-in for the Justice League. The Superman of the group kills himself because he notices that the world, including his fellow heroes, are kind of corrupt and dark and beyond saving. And then it comes out that maybe he wasn't the guy who killed himself. It was murder. And that's when Diamond Dallas Page as Batman decides to solve the murder. And the effects in this, like there's a fight between him and the Wonder Woman character. It looks like something out of a theme park attraction. You know, it's like CG from 40 years ago. It is so. I just got to tell you,
the story has become tiresome.
I love the fact that it was an entertaining mystery while not giving a shit that it was low budget.
It's no Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, though.
Nothing is Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. Okay, let's just get beyond that. Okay, nothing's ever gonna be Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park, Rob.
Well, speaking of Diamond Dallas Page and self-harm and all that, that brings me to my next selection, which is a movie I've talked about before. I think from 2007, that I thought was decent. I liked it more than it's probably as good, but I actually liked the television show somewhat solidly, and that's Shooter with Mark Wahlberg. Obviously, we got a lot of sniper movies in the late 90s, or really just in the 90s. I go back to Tom Berenger and we've, the Stallone movie, The Specialist, and all these type of spec op things became really mainstream. And here you got something where I think the conscious decision on Marky Mark's part to kind of reform his so-called bad boy image, although his best movie by far is Fear, and that's undisputed. We'll discuss that later. he seems like he brings a legitimate amount of interest into what you have to go, and they draw you in with a nice little swerve that everyone should see 100 miles an hour. The way it goes. And it's a little action thing, and it's nothing too deep or whatever. And like I say, the Offspring TV show was tolerable, and that was on Netflix for a while, also called Shooter, starring one of those guys from I Know What You Did Last 3 summers ago. I can't think of his name and don't care to really. But that being said, it's not bad. We don't really need to discuss it because it's not really that meaty of a topic. So that would circle back to you, E, for yet another selection, and I hope it moves me, sir.
Well, already to me, you're not going to go to Venkman.
Oh, excuse me, Venkman, the Milwaukee man in the middle. I apologize.
Well, he actually took one of mine. So he took Alice in Borderland. That was my number 2 because, but since we already talked about that, I'll go with my number 1, The Ninth Precinct. This is where a rookie cop. It's a Taiwanese film. Yes, it's Taiwanese, not China. Screw you, China. And it's basically a rookie cop joins underground police force and battles supernatural monsters, basically protecting the veil between the supernatural and the physical world. And it just, I got like nostalgia because I remember watching Special Unit. That was a TV show back in the UPN back in the 90s. Well, it's kind of the same thing, like this group of rookie cops, who basically, try to keep the public from seeing all the supernatural creatures. So this is obviously because it's going to be I believe it's a movie. Yeah, it's came out in 2019. It's going to be a little darker, and you see that the first opening you see is like they're going in this elevator, and I'm thinking like they're going far underground. So I'm expecting it to be kind of gory. I mean, I want more Korean zombie stuff. I won't lie. It's just the way they handle it is so much better than I'll get flagged for this. Train to Busan is better than George Romero stuff.
No, come on. Oh my God, don't even get me started, please. I know you're hot for it, and yes, we've talked about it in our review of All of Us Are Dead about how things are different just with the way they display culture and relationships and everything. So it's an interesting take on, when a scene comes up, we go, well, this is how we do in America, especially in the 80s. But now you're that's just hearsay. But
if you rewind 5 minutes ago, if you rewind, you can watch E just almost have a heart attack.
Yeah, E, are you stable there? Breathe through the nose, out the mouth.
Yeah, okay. Maybe the last one, the one where the kids were doing the found footage zombie, that George Romero, but no, I'm sorry. First of all, the running zombie trope, I'm not a big fan of it.
See, that's where it's different. I love that, and
they would lose energy. They're not. There's nothing within them to produce more energy. It just doesn't make sense to have running zombies. Even if you started off, the longer you go, the less energy they would have, and therefore would.
If you're going off a base of science or logic, you gotta realize zombies aren't real things. So just because one person thinks they're like this,
okay, yes, but however, you do have to follow the logic and the rules of your own genre, of your own movie.
And depends on how long. No, it also depends how long the person's been a zombie.
Some people love their running zombies.
In the beginning of The Walking Dead, the first season they ran. Then they came to Walking Dead.
Yeah, and then as they went, that was done well.
So we haven't seen that in Train to Busan. It's not like World War Z where they're climbing like ants. But
that was done well. And what else was done well, by the way, was a film from 2018, and it stars Lakeith Stanfield. He was the cop from Knives Out, and the guy who you see get possessed in Get Out. He likes those Out films. But this is about him. He goes and he gets a job as a telemarketer. And this is just one weird freaking mind screw of a movie. At one point, half humans, half horses show up. This is just one of the most bizarre comedies you will see in a long time. It's not an Adam Sandler go for the fart joke kind of comedy. This thing is one of those things that understands that its audience is going to be intelligent and just says, I hope you get the joke, as it puts it out there. It's called Sorry to Bother You, one of the most bizarre trips you're ever going to go down as far as cinema is concerned. well acted, well made. Check it out. I think Venkman, you would probably be disappointed.
Is that the guy with Black Panther?
No.
Or no?
What-
Wait, what was it called again?
It's
Sorry
called
to bother
Sorry
you.
to Bother You.
The telemarketer one?
Yeah.
Oh, that looked boring.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew this isn't the movie for
It
you.
looks so over the top, forced humor.
You're no. Well, the humor. That's the whole thing. The humor isn't forced. All of the humor just happens, and it lets you, as the viewer, to decide what to do with it.
He's got to
And
put on his white voice. in order to-
And I know you're more of a slipping on a banana peel kind of guy.
Not really.
that's
I'm
fine.
more into
And
an
that's
action,
fine.
gory stuff. And I mean, humor is fun, if it's a kid's movie. But like I said, it's just I'm not into all humor stuff.
Right. Well, that's what I was
Yeah.
mentioning. But there
Yeah.
you go. Have you seen this movie, Rob?
No, you've mentioned it before, and it's in
Mhm.
my queue. I've just obviously been involved here on the Extreme Movie Show with other things that we've decided to do, and we've tried to do a lot more of it around Halloween, or just depending on the flow of what's going on with the year. Obviously, we did a stream recently on Ivan Reitman passing too, and then we got into the
Reitman.
Rocky stuff too. Yeah, thank you, sir. Okay, we all know what the hell we're talking about here. Mr. I'm going to use all the names in from All of Us Are Dead, and then halfway in you start going to this and that, which I said let's do that instead because it's functional. Anyway, because he's right, it's hard to follow, and I'm like, well, let's just
I'd
go
have
by
no
Pink
problem.
Sweater Girl, by Jock Guy, by Ding
Yeah,
Dong
well,
Dude, by Archery Girl. And that's
they
not to
kind of
demean
look
anybody.
alike, and then they dress them alike. So it's like, wait a second.
As far as the names, I can understand if you don't catch the name, no, but I could tell them apart in the show.
Well, I have a runner-up before my main one, and my runner-up is actually the picture on the thumbnail, and that's from 1998, and it's called Wild Things. And everyone wants to go, oh, it's just because of the girls and sexy and this and that. Well, erotic thrillers, as we know, are a personal favorite here of Rob on the Extreme Movie Show, and you don't really get many of them. And proof in the in the pudding, as we like to say, one of our most recent viral type videos was Body Double from 1983, a fantastic film with
really
several
is
thousand views. It's brilliant. It's the best Hitchcock movie he never made that he would describe, and I will not argue that. But Wild Things actually has got was it Matt Damon in it as like this seedy cop, and this is before There's Something About Mary, where he kind of went a little stupid and silly and goofy, and then of course in Lone Pines or whatever that Shyamalan show was. It's actually decent. I think Woody Harrelson's in this as well, and there's just all this stuff going on. It's triangles, and yes, the women are very alluring. They're at their peak, but it's seductive. And when you live down here in Central Florida, you realize that this southern thing that a lot of people think of with beaches and sun and sand, there's an older part of Florida too that gets you caught up in it. And old detective novels by some people really tried to capture that spirit that was more like a 1940s type of film. And as much as people would say Chinatown from the early 70s is one of the best John Huston films and all that, some people have a hard time with it. It did a good job of capturing the whole Bogart kind of dark passage vibe that you'd get from a 40s thing, or Dark City like we reviewed with Charlton Heston. So yeah, it's sexy. Yeah, it's a cop kind of thing, but it's pretty good. And again, like I mentioned before about Gattaca, it's very rare that we get to see a movie like it that's actually done well. Denzel's one here in Florida, where he plays the mayor of the town. I don't want to say too much about it. Out of sight, or I don't know what the hell it is. It's pretty damn good, and it's worth watching for Wild Things too. But I've got one more. RDV, do you have one more?
Yeah, mine's actually
Go ahead.
flashback to the 80s. I just saw it was on there. Top Gun. Whether you like it or not, it's on there. I was like,
Top
dude,
Gun.
dude, that's the one movie. Whenever it's on TV, I gotta sit down and start watching it. It is just fun, and I know every single line on there. It's one of those cult classics, and I just love everything because that was the movie they actually got the permission from the United States Air Force and Navy, to actually do all that, show the carrier and all that stuff, go on there with the planes, where Iron Eagle had to use Israeli, planes and all that stuff. They were not, because they did not get the permission from the United States. So that was kind of interesting when I was reading about that.
Well, I remember I went and saw it. The last time I saw it was about 10 years ago. They put it out as a 3D movie, and it didn't. I still enjoyed it, but for some reason, it was just I don't know, maybe it was a different time. I was like, great flight scenes. Great flight scenes. The rest of it was just, I don't know. It was just something there. Except for, I'm going to say this, and it's not just because he made a great documentary last year, but really Val Kilmer freaking owns that show.
He does.
Every time he's on, it's just like, wow. Tom Cruise is about to just blow up, and he's going to own the freaking movie world for the next 40 years. But Val Kilmer is just dead freaking on in everything he said. Now, I don't know if you remember this, Rob, but that's one of the movies we would either get out early or skip school to go see at the Northgate 4.
Yeah.
And there's another one I'm going to bring up that just started on Netflix that we did exactly that. We, I do believe we got out early and we rushed over to the Northgate 4. I don't even think that theater is around anymore. This is 30-something years ago. And it's called Stand By Me.
Okay, yeah.
You brought up
you
brought up the Stephen King movie. I figured, hey, you know what? This one's there. Let's talk about this. This is, in my opinion, one of the first Stephen King movies that just really, like, I liked Christine, but Stand By Me almost elevated the genre. It was almost like, because they were horror films, nobody really put too much effort or too much money, too much care into producing them.
Correct.
This one, great freaking acting by a group of kids. Some of them are going to go on to big things, and one of them is going to go on to die outside of a club by a drug overdose. But they're all freaking incredible actors in this film, and it's a really well told story. The drama's there. I don't know, and a lot of the dialogue, even though the movie took place in the 50s, it was really something that at any age, guys can see themselves in, because the tropes were there. So you had that group of friends, and you had somebody from each one. Incredible freaking movie.
Well, and coming of age, ones are something that even today we've talked about how the Vampire Diaries, of course, it's juvenile is the word we like to use, and that's, you could argue whether or not that's coming of age. The only difference is back then it was about incidences that would happen. In this case, a dead body they want to go visit, and of course Vampire Diaries, you get this supernatural involved, and you can argue other things too with other types of movies that are out there, but obviously anybody that's a hardcore Stephen King fan or even casual, I'll just reiterate the obvious that may not be, especially for our younger listeners, and I'm really talking about here with the Stephen King stuff of the past 20-25 years, and he's had a lot of schlock, but his early stuff we always like to say is really good. And he's dabbled a little bit outside of horror, but the thing is his short stories are his best works. I love Me Salem's Lot. I think it's fantastic. I look forward to the reboot to see if it's any good. I don't have faith in it necessarily, but because it's Salem's Lot, I know I'm going to see it. And he's had some stuff. I think Under the Dome had potential. Some other things did, but execution's a whole nother thing. But Stephen King, bottom line, that's the one thing, if somebody would ask my opinion, I would say is his short stories are so much better than any of the other stuff. And if you, well, Stand By Me is those collection of short stories. And he's got a few others that are like that too. But
it was what was it? The 4 Past Midnight, the one with the seasons, I believe it was.
Different seasons. Yeah.
Different seasons. Yeah. What was no? Yeah. I'm described the cover of one and said a different different seasons. Yeah. It was yeah, I like that actually, and that was the same book that gave us Shawshank Redemption. So
yeah,
good stuff.
You brought up Stand By Me, and I gotta say, every time I watch that, it's one of those movies. It's like the narrating. It's what this guy talking about his past, and while the very ending, it always gets me. Like I'm not gonna cry. Not gonna cry. Like one by one, they all like one dies, another one. It's like, and I was like, oh, and then yeah, it's it's basically I'm getting that age now, 0.0, and then you guys have already gone to that age where everyone you grew up, hanging out with, you don't hang out with them anymore.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that Rob and I can't relate to. I never had friends like I had when I was 12. Yeah, we do. Because it's Rob, it's Todd, it's Chris Creamer, and we've got all our friends from 12. We're still friends. So That's the one line. I get it. I get what they're saying, and you could, and we at least
I can relate because I knew people that had died, you know, or just fell out, you know, didn't talk to the other one anymore.
it just happens. I mean, even with what I just said, everybody's got their own lives, so we're not hanging out like we are. We are friends, but yeah, you just don't hang out with your friends the way you used to.
Well, Stand By Me definitely, I think, captures that, and I'll close with one more that's not really related to it, but it brings up some topics of, you know, time travel and how things are done. I think of like Dark, the German show, and a few others too. We can argue if it's good or bad, or if it's lazy writing and stuff. But I'd mentioned this briefly before, and I'm bringing it up only because you're here, E, and it's something I highly recommend if you like this sort of thing. So much so it's been probably the most interesting, watchable thing that I've seen lately on Netflix, and that's a little short, I think it's 8 episodes maybe, called Archive 81. And I bring this up because it's more of a psychological thriller than a horror, I would say. And where movies today, you know, if I bring up like Candyman from last year, the directing is fabulous. It's great looking, and the story is, like most everything of his, just horrible and really bad. And flip-flopping things doesn't mean you've rewritten it, in my opinion. Archive 81 does something a little bit different that kind of reminds me of Stand By Me. But that's this. Stand By Me, you're going back, looking at memories, having an incident, thinking about as an adult. I don't know that you call that time travel, but what's interesting, and I'm already putting up here on the LK's comment about Vampire Diaries, the first 3 seasons being popcorn fun. One thing that I think Vampire Diaries did well, and Stand By Me, is they give you a sense of the town as a character. And Stephen King would do that. He would characterize things. Whether you like somebody or not, he'd go into great detail about all these characters, even if you don't read them on a page for, you know, another 200 pages, let's say. That's what he's known for. And we've talked about a lot here on Xtreme Movie Show that, yeah, something can be written well, but if I don't give a rat's ass about who I'm rooting for or watching, why do I care? And you can be heady, you can be intellectual, but that's snobby kind of stuff. And really, if it's not fun, why watch it? And here, when we just talk about Archive 81, it's about a young African-American man who has potentially some mental issues, and he's been tasked by mysterious, rich, Caucasian, older individual of a corporation who does a great job of not being boisterous or in your face, to take some old VHS tapes from the late 80s, early 90s and restore them. So he goes to this building on the outskirts of town, and he's by himself, and he's going through these tapes one at a time. And I hate found footage movies. I've never liked them, really. I never have. And you can argue that this might be that. But what they do good in here is he starts getting captivated by the fact that a young woman in graduate school in the early 90s is doing a documentary on, I forget the term, of where you're taking the history of the building that you're in by talking to the residents and just trying to put a little stamp on it in time. And at first it seemed a little lame, like, I don't know, but the music and the intro hooked me. And then there's a scene on a trailer that said, you know, because of the trailer, I'm going to give it an episode. And there's just the way that when she's holding the camera that she's trying to take pictures of, the way one guy gives her a look and you see some symbols on the building. I'm like, damn it, they tapped into my male psyche with secret buildings and codes and passwords and all this potential kind of stuff. And this girl getting trapped in a mystery. And so every episode, it's like a different tape and it goes deeper. And this guy might be losing his mind. He may not be, but it's really good psychological stuff. And I actually think it's one of the few things on Netflix that actually rose to the occasion of somebody actually trying for once. And that's why I have to recommend it to you, Archive 81. I think it's one of those shows you get into, but it's one of those ones that when you want to turn the lights off, you don't want any distractions, you don't want to be looking at your phone, you just want to watch it cold. And if you get sucked into it, because it's a very deliberate pace, and that's not your thing a little bit, I found myself hooked, and I highly recommend it to anybody, especially if you like that sort of thing. But
that's actually tremendous. That's actually something that Gail and I were looking at to watch. I'm glad you gave us a little preview or review of it, because now I know.
Well, when's the last time either of you guys had a movie where you looked at somebody you're watching it with and you were like, shh? Oh, it's that kind of show for me.
I have to do that all the time. But yeah, I get what you're saying. The kind where you're like just watching it and everything. And you're like in it. But I literally have to tell Gail no, because she's one of those people who pick the most inopportune times to lose interest or start talking about something. Like we could watch Empire Strikes Back, and he'll be like, "You don't know what happened to your father." No, Ben told me, and Gail will go, "Hey, I was thinking about getting." No, you don't actually talk during that part. You pay attention, and then of course she goes, "What happened?" But no, I always have to tell her that. But now I'm going to. I think I'll put that on tonight because this is one of the ones that we're looking at. There's so many TV shows that came out and then just seem to have disappeared, and we didn't watch like second season of Lock and Key. There is one that came. This is the one I want to end on.
Unfortunately,
the second season of Lock and Key was bad.
I like the first season, but
I love the first season. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. There was one that came out last month, and this will be my last one. I thought it would be kind of like Airplane because I heard it was a parody. And it's of a genre of movie I really don't like. Last year, Amy Adams did one called The Girl Across the Street or something like that. It starts off with Gone Girl with Ben Affleck, if you remember that one. It's called The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window, which was the Amy Adams thing. And it's a parody of all these kind of overly dramatic films that stars a woman who is just way too nosy for her own good that gets involved in some sort of drama or something. And so I heard it was a parody, so I'm expecting kind of a Farrelly Brothers joke every minute, and there is that. But it is deliberate, as you said, deliberately paced. It is paced like one of those movies, and you can almost lose yourself in it as if it were one of those films. But it's not. It's making fun of it as it goes. The constant wine drinking is probably the most obvious of all gags, because in all of these movies, the women are pouring themselves wine, and she's always holding this big ass snifter that's full to the top. But it just works. I watched it. I said, wow, this is kind of. I don't know. There's something. I'll give it one more episode. And by the end of the second episode, I'm hooked. I'm watching this thing all the way through. It's like 8 or 10 episodes of this thing. I recommend it. I don't know if I highly recommend it for the crowd here, but I just wanted to mention it because it was really.
It's no Malignant, okay, which is one of the best troll movies I've seen.
These are on opposite ends of whatever spectrum you want to put them on. Seriously,
okay, right.
Yeah, because Malignant is exactly the opposite pacing of The Woman in the House Across the Street from the Girl in the Window. This is a very trust me on this. But I still say that movie is bonkers stupid for having somebody with the super strength of someone walking backwards. You and I are on different ends on that one.
Yeah, we are, and it's how it is. RDV, do you have a last one or any final thoughts? You always do a good job finding some international stuff, and so we always have a good give and go trying to look for stuff.
Looking at some of the stuff, I still haven't seen The Silent Sea. I'll have to check that out. But there was one I just saw. It was kind of like a Korean space one. It's called Space Sweepers.
Oh, that is so much fun.
That looks fun. It came out, I believe, last year. It's a 2 hour and 16 minutes. It's basically this group of people chase after space debris in a faraway, in the year 2029 or 2092. And these 4 misfits basically like unearth an explosive secrets during the attempted trade of a wide-eyed humanoid.
Well, they take on this little girl, and that's part of what they're going to trade. And they find out that the little girl is actually a robot, and they're like, okay, well, how can we use her? And then they find out that the little girl is actually a bomb.
Yep.
And there's just a lot to it. It's kind of a wild show, but thoroughly entertaining. You're right.
It's actually a movie. So, but like I said, it's and it has that. Well, I was talking to you, Rob, about the whole CG stuff. Some of the CG you can tell it's like, wow, you can tell it's really CG, but it's a fantasy, action adventure stuff. So a little bit of comedy in it. That's what it looks like. It's really sci-fi. So if you're really into that kind of stuff, fast-paced action stuff, I'm definitely probably gonna check it out. I'm watching the trailer for the second time. The first time I watch it, you see the robots like, oh, it's really bad CG. But I was like, you know what? I'll give it a chance.
Well, we'll close with this notion too, and we kind of unintentionally, it just sort of happened organically on our last stream live, and I just wanted to address it because we had talked about doing some Korean stuff with Squid Games and everything being popular, and so that led us to, All of Us Are Dead, and we had reviewed that, and we were talking about movies, and sometimes you get into these themes and certain rules, and we can argue about why zombie movies work or don't work and try to be serious or goofy or whatever, but as an 80s based channel, generally speaking, even though we branch out, we kind of discovered that some movies that some of the listeners were putting up in chat that we were discussing and bringing up and talking seemed to just sound better if you put the word zombie at the end of it. So meaning everything would be like an adjective or whatever, and then zombie would be the noun. So for example, I'll go with what LK's asking here, an old 80s movie, Ice Pirates, zombies, Ice Pirate zombies. Would you not want to watch a movie about zombies who happen to be ice pirates? I know I sure would.
You can just watch the Kingdom.
You could do this
It's
with
the same
almost
thing.
anything. What's that?
You can just watch the Kingdom. That's a zombie show that takes place in feudal Japan. So
no, just put zombie at the end of something. Gattaca zombies.
Yeah,
I want to know who those zombies are. I want to know how the hell they got into space. I want to know how the hell those zombies are so smart that they made it through school. That would be incredible.
Trying to think of the lamest film you could put zombies to, and would it make it be cooler? Yes, Baby Genius Zombies. You're right. I would watch that movie. It would work.
Tell me a recent movie you hated.
Change it. Change V for Vendetta to Z for Zombies. There you go.
Vendetta zombies. Zombies are out and they have a vendetta. I don't know why, but
the Zombie Academy.
So guaranteed action. Yeah, the Extreme Zombie Show. Ronnie had a whole bunch of them too. Top Gun zombies.
Shameless
heavy metal vibes.
Zombie Ranch.
It works. Well, this happened because unfortunately we were doing Rocky 5 and plodding through it, and so Rocky Balboa zombies. I don't know, but a bunch of boxing zombies sounds pretty damn interesting, right? So, okay, I'm not giving you more any ideas. I was just making light of the fun there because, like I say, you just added, and it's one of those rules, and I guarantee you guys are going to do it. Back to the zombie future. Yes. Casablanca zombies. How'd they get there?
We're no zombies.
Exactly. See?
Some angels.
Wild Thing zombies. Think about what we had tonight. Shooter zombies. Christine zombies. Yeah, it's there you go. So yeah, Crow had some too. Shawshank Zombie Redemption. I mean, you could go on and on and on. It's just, I feel like it's an episode of Mad Magazine. I should have said episode, but he knows that old movie reference and magazine reference. Yeah,
I think his internet cut out or he jumped out.
He's the one that. Well, you know what? I will publicly say this while we're live and closing up tonight. I want to thank E for his yearly contribution for showing up unannounced to the Extreme Zombie or movie show, because he always gives great feedback on that stuff, and we go back a long way, and with the love of movies and everything else there too. So it's always nice to occasionally hear from him. But I think the zombies are at his door right now.
I think there actually was a show called, or I know there's a book called Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies.
Well, this even extends into the adult, world, because, you can have movies like Three Men and Your Sister and they not be so blatantly, pornographic. But think of the old classic Behind the Green Door, zombies. Dude, maybe we're at his door right now.
Trusty's on actually good, thing here. He's got Pee-wee's Big Zombie Adventure.
I'm telling you, would you not want to see that? So it's kind of silly, but the idea here is, and I mentioned it before and we'll close, is that there are some shows out there that rise up and seem to hit all the marks. There are some that are, popcorn fun and they do it well. And then there's the majority of everything else. And that's Netflix's model. We understand that. We appreciate it. But it also makes a good for us to actually kind of come down and talk about, because Apple has nothing on it. And I've watched some shows I've really enjoyed, but they don't have a lot of content. HBO Max probably has what you might argue is to be the highest quality content currently, but again, that might be debatable. But you can usually find something, especially if you like something that's not American, because Netflix's model is not really based for America. It's really based for overseas content, like much of mainstream Hollywood too. So Debbie does zombies. I don't know how she does, but I bet she has a lot of fun doing that, Crow. Go ahead.
Final Go Zombie, American Zombie Tale?
It works with anything, especially Disney movies. Okay.
I mean, like you said, like you Gone with the Wind with zombies.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for listening and piling in. We had a lot of listeners tonight. I appreciate that. We're getting close to 1,000 subs, and we're getting some watch time up there too. We've definitely been tweaking our format here and there with RDV and Professor Pixel generously donating their time as far as reviewing things. I really appreciate that, and it's so much fun that we keep doing it here. And we're going to continue on Sunday with our Rocky review of the franchise. We're going to be doing Rocky Balboa, the 2006 continuation, I'll say, of the Rocky franchise, one that really kind of rebooted him. In the meantime, Evil Pleasure, go see Get Carter if you want some pain. I love it. It's so tremendous. But Stallone had been in a rut, and he hit a home run with Rocky Balboa and proves once again that if you take some time and put in your characters, he can dust it off 30 years later and still have a great hit, and Stallone's great with that. We're also going to be doing James Bond, our next one here too, because Pixel and I are going through the franchise and reviewing those, and it'll be Roger Moore's first one in the Live and Let Die. That's it right there. 71, I think it is. And then after that, we'll, next month we'll be doing the next one after that, The Man with the Golden Gun, one that really still drives me mad to this day. But RDV, thanks for showing up tonight, lending in your expertise, especially in the foreign market, because we all have our specialties, and that's yours, and that's really good stuff. And you brought the zombie thing front and center like we always do. Everybody, have a good night. Thanks for listening. Take care. Stay extreme.